I don't think I would go to the extent where I'm putting a lot of time in future infrastructure, dividing properties and stuff like that. Maybe major roads going through it. I do agree with Alder Frank about the traffic study. I think it would be better served to wait and do something like that when Marcus and them have been open for a while, 2-3 months. And maybe Menards would be willing to, unless they absolutely have to, do an update of some sort of west side traffic study, put dollars towards a future one. So, and then the other thing with this plan is, found out yesterday there may be more than one pond, maybe 2 ponds, Scott, is that right? Needed in the west side area?
We discussed the stormwater issue, and I was just simply pointing out that the pond that we have been talking about for the last few years is not intended to serve this area that we're dealing with. That pond serves a different watershed. So there could be 2 ponds. That pond could be expanded to accommodate both. We haven't really had any direction or a discussion in any detail about providing a regional facility to serve this area that we're talking about.
Well, okay. Well, I know all the people that farm this area know that the water in this area goes to where the pond is supposed to go. So whether there's 2 ponds or 1 pond, I mean, all that stuff has to play into the plan. And we know there's parts and pieces to this that exist today, and parts that are going to come in the near future, the ponds being one. So I think if they put all that in, leave the zoning of the rest of it, somewhat general. I mean, there's a few things that can fit into certain zonings, and maybe that's the best way to go instead of locking it into only certain zonings. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions before I call for the Scott?
Yeah, if I could, just a little clarification. There's some confusion on the traffic study and so forth. I don't think this scope includes a big traffic study. That's not the intent here. Menards will have to do a traffic impact analysis as part of their proposal. They have started preparing that. I think that's what the counters and so forth that we see on the west side, it's all related to, they've initiated that process. One of the big questions they have, and that we can't really answer for them right now, is what do we factor in for traffic? Anytime you do a TIA, you look at the immediate impact to see what the immediate needs for changes might be when you've got a big traffic generator coming in. And you also look down the road, 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road, to get some handle on how this impacts both the short and the long range situation out there. What we can't answer for them right now is what to expect on the lands around this property. You've obviously supported a change of some sort recently with the Menards concept plan. We don't know how that's going to impact the rest of the properties. There seems to be a feeling that our current plan is out of date and not relevant out there anymore. So it's hard for us to guide them on how to deal with that issue. So I think this is an important step. But the one thing I did want to address, Alder Frank, your concerns. When we did the traffic modeling out here and we sized the Grand Avenue and the other infrastructure out there, it was based on expected development on those properties that you're speaking of. So just because Cabela's is moving in now and will be generating some cars doesn't mean we haven't prepared for that. Our traffic analysis and the reason that streets out there right now are very overbuilt is because we're anticipating those businesses to open. The situation we have here is this is a change to the plan. We hadn't anticipated this change when we did the initial traffic study. And I think it's important to, if we're going to relook at the land use in here and change our plan, it's important to do that before we have Menards do their TIA so that the information they're giving to us is valid and it's based on what we want to see happen along this corridor. So I think it is important. I think this is a smart move to do what I would call a kind of a neighborhood update to this area in the city. I do think there's a need to look at our comprehensive plan and consider a major update to that plan here in the near future. I don't think we can expect business activity to stop in the meantime to let us complete that. So this will give us good information to deal with Menards application. I think we can make better recommendations to you. You can make better decisions if we do this. But I did want to point out that I think some of the traffic concerns that you're concerned about have been factored into our previous studies and will be factored into anything in the future that we do here.
Thank you. Any other questions? Alder Weber.
Scott, are you implying that Menards has agreed to hold off on applying until we complete the study?
Not necessarily. They certainly made that statement at the city council meeting when they were asked. We've had discussions with them recently. Right now, they are planning to pull most of their application material together and file at the end of the month. I believe our next filing deadline is somewhere around March 2nd, which would bring them to the Plan Commission in April, and the City Council in April. Ideally, I'd like to talk with them if we decide to move forward with this about moving that back 1 month, which would give us a chance to kind of get through this process. They would be able to use the information that we're putting together here as well for their application materials, and so this would kind of follow up behind that, assuming the scenario that moves forward supports this change that they're contemplating. So if this is passed this evening, that's a conversation we would have with their representative tomorrow. Not sure how we want to address this, Aaron, but we also talked about the possibility of discussing with them a cost share on this. They're certainly the ones initiating this change. I think they're benefiting from it quite a bit in terms of the land use analysis that they need to do their traffic study. And I would think some sort of cost share would be appropriate. And with your blessing, we'd like to at least approach that with them to see if we can get them to cover a portion of the cost of this project.
Anything else? Alder Weber,
No, thank you.
would you please call the roll?
Fassbender?
Aye.
Frank?
No.
Gage? Aye. Gahan?
Aye.
Petkowski?
Aye.
Walensky?
Aye.
Weber?
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to report of council president, just a reminder, Monday morning at 6:45, that's a good time, 6:45, right? Over at Cannery Square for the Jimmy the Groundhog celebration. I'm sure I'm going to see every single one of you there. Report of the city administrator.
I have nothing to report, Madam President.
The mayor is absent this evening. Referrals for future agendas. Being none, motion for adjournment.
I so moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.